Blood had stained Sarah Morgan's white shirt. She could feel Atlas trembling beneath her hand, his golden fur quivering with tension. But the loyal golden retriever never retreated. He was her last line of defense against the danger she couldn't see. As the sound of motorcycle engines echoed from the dark alley, growing closer by the second, Sarah gripped the knife tightly. Her military training from years ago rushed back, muscle memory taking over as she positioned herself against the wall. Atlas pressed against her leg. The dog's ears perked forward, tracking sounds Sarah could only imagine. "Easy, boy," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rumbling engines. The bitter irony wasn't lost on her. 8 years of military service in hostile territories had ended with her safe return home, only to lose her sight in a random car accident 6 months later. The footsteps approached, 3, maybe 4 sets. Sarah could smell leather and gasoline. Atlas's growl deepened, a warning vibrating through his powerful frame. The knife in Sarah's hand felt inadequate against whatever was coming, but she wouldn't go down without a fight. How had they gotten here? 3 weeks ago, everything had been so different. 3 weeks ago, before she'd witnessed, no, heard, something she shouldn't have. Before Vince and his crew had marked her. Before her peaceful life with Atlas had turned into this desperate game of cat and mouse. Sarah took a deep breath and steeled herself. The alley had only one exit, and it was blocked by approaching danger. Whatever happened next, she and Atlas would face it together. The Los Angeles morning had begun peacefully. The sky was crystal clear blue, and the sidewalk outside the local coffee shop was filled with customers enjoying their morning beverages. Among them, sitting quietly at an outdoor table, was Sarah Morgan. The visually impaired woman visited this coffee shop daily. Beside her, her loyal golden retriever, Atlas, remained vigilant. Atlas was no ordinary guide dog. His upright posture and impressive presence stemmed from years of training as a former search and rescue dog. The scars visible beneath his golden coat told stories of heroism, pulling children from earthquake rubble in Haiti, finding survivors after avalanches in Colorado. Now retired, Atlas had dedicated his life to protecting Sarah, offering not just guidance but an emotional bond that the woman deeply valued. Sarah hadn't always been blind. A former army medic, she had treated countless wounded soldiers in Afghanistan before a roadside bomb left her with severe injuries. Though surgeons saved her life, they couldn't save her sight. Atlas had come into her life during her darkest days of rehabilitation, a gift from a veterans support program that matched injured soldiers with specially trained service animals. Dr. Eleanor Chen, Sarah's rehabilitation specialist, watched them from across the street. She smiled, seeing how far Sarah had come, from the bitter, angry patient who had once thrown a water pitcher across the hospital room to this composed woman navigating life with quiet dignity. Eleanor checked her watch. She had 10 minutes before her next appointment at the clinic. Perhaps time for a quick hello. But as Eleanor prepared to cross the street, she noticed 3 motorcycles approaching the café. Something about the riders made her pause. Their deliberate movements, the way they scanned the area. Professional instinct told her to wait and watch. The noise of 3 motorcycles shattered the peaceful atmosphere as Sarah quietly sipped her coffee. The bikes parked near the café, drawing everyone's attention. 3 men dismounted, their leather jackets adorned with distinctive patches. They appeared relaxed, but their careful examination of the surroundings added tension to the atmosphere. Vince, the group's leader, was a confident man who laughed loudly. While talking with his friends, he declared his dominance of the place with animated gestures. Atlas, always alert, pricked up his ears and sensed something unusual. Detective Jack Reynolds recognized the patches immediately from his unmarked car across the street. Los Angeles Organized Crime Division had been tracking the Hollow Kings motorcycle gang for months, suspected of everything from drug trafficking to high-end vehicle theft. What puzzled Jack was seeing them in this upscale neighborhood, far from their usual territory. He reached for his radio, then hesitated. No cause for action yet. Their presence alone wasn't enough to justify intervention. Jack had spent 18 months building a case against the Kings, and a premature move could jeopardize the entire operation. Still, something felt off. The shorter of the three men, Milo, according to their intelligence files, seemed particularly nervous, constantly scanning the cafe patio. The third man, known only as Wrench, positioned himself with a clear view of both entrances. These weren't casual coffee drinkers. They were men on a mission. Jack's phone vibrated. A text from his partner. "Chatter on the wire. They're looking for someone." Jack's eyes narrowed, focusing first on the gang members, then on the patrons. His gaze settled on a blind woman with a service dog. Something about her stillness, the way she held herself, a military bearing perhaps, caught his attention. The men began wandering between tables, looking around. Vince noticed Atlas and Sarah pausing to look at the dog. "What a big dog we have here," he said, causing Atlas to lock eyes with him. Vince laughed at his own comment and leaned forward slightly, as if testing the dog's reaction. Atlas remained motionless, but his posture contained a silent warning. Vince, perhaps wanting to prove something, made exaggerated hand gestures as if joking. "Is he really as smart as he looks?" he asked his friends, who laughed strangely. The atmosphere tensed. Atlas remained still, but his eyes never left Vince. From across the street, Eleanor Chen watched the interaction with increasing concern. The body language was all wrong, predatory, challenging. As a trauma specialist, she recognized the patterns of intimidation. She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. Meanwhile, Jack Reynolds slid his hand inside his jacket, fingers brushing his service weapon. Something in Vince's posture triggered alarm bells. The slightly widened stance, the calculated movements designed to appear casual, but reveal intentionality to a trained eye. Milo had disappeared inside the cafe, while Wrench maintained his position by the entrance. Classic flanking maneuver. But why target a blind woman? Unless... Jack's phone vibrated again. Another text. "Woman with dog, Sarah Morgan. Former Army medic. Possible witness in the Eastside warehouse case last month." The detective's pulse quickened. The warehouse case, a shootout between rival gangs that left 3 dead. No witnesses had come forward. But a blind woman might have heard something crucial without being seen herself. "Is everything okay?" Sarah asked, unaware of the gazes around her. Her voice was calm, but there was anxiety in it, as if she could sense the change in Atlas's behavior. As tense minutes passed, Vince approached Sarah's table. "You've got a beautiful dog here, don't you?" he said, his voice carrying a slight undertone of contempt. Sarah smiled slightly, trying to lighten the situation. "Thank you. Atlas is my best friend." Vince tilted his head, pretending to be curious. "Atlas, huh? From the Greek gods. Let's see if he lives up to his name." Eleanor Chen had seen enough. She crossed the street with deliberate steps, her hospital ID badge prominently displayed on her lanyard. Professional authority sometimes deterred trouble better than direct confrontation. "Sarah, I'm so glad I caught you before my shift," she called with forced cheerfulness, positioning herself strategically between Sarah's table and Vince. "I brought those audiobooks I promised." Sarah's face registered momentary confusion before understanding dawned. "Dr. Chen, I wasn't expecting you today." Vince evaluated Eleanor, sizing up this new complication. His eyes flickered to her hospital badge, then back to Sarah and Atlas. Something calculated passed behind his eyes, a mental adjustment of plans. Detective Reynolds watched the doctor's intervention with approval. Civilian interference wasn't ideal, but her presence had changed the dynamic. He used the distraction to ease closer, positioning himself at a table with clear sightlines to all players in this increasingly dangerous game. Wrench had noticed the detective's movement, whispering something to Vince, that made the gang leader's expression harden. Before Sarah could answer, Vince made a quick move and tried to touch Atlas's nose. This gesture, seeming harmless to onlookers, was enough to trigger instincts in Atlas, who was trained to detect threats. The golden retriever didn't attack, but backed away and growled softly in warning. As the seriousness of the situation increased, Vince began attracting the crowd's attention. While Sarah tried to calm her dog, Vince's pride was clearly hurt. His friends were egging him on, worsening the behavior of the motorcycle leader. "I wouldn't do that again," Eleanor advised coolly, her voice carrying the authoritative tone she used with unruly patience. "Service dogs should never be distracted while working." Vince's eyes narrowed. "I don't take orders from... Everything all right here?" Detective Reynolds appeared beside the table, casually flashing his badge just enough for Vince to see without making a public scene. "Beautiful day for coffee, isn't it?" The subtle flash of recognition in Vince's eyes confirmed Jack's suspicions. The gang leader knew exactly who he was. The Hollow Kings had extensive intelligence networks. They made it their business to identify undercover officers. Milo emerged from the café, 2 coffee cups in hand, freezing momentarily when he spotted Jack. A quick glance passed between him and Vince, something unspoken but urgent. Sarah, sensing the shifting tensions around her, placed her hand firmly on Atlas's back. The dog's training allowed him to read her anxiety through touch, heightening his protective instincts without escalating the situation. "We were just leaving," Vince said finally, his casual tone belied by the tension in his shoulders. "Enjoy your day, ma'am. That's quite a guardian you've got there." Tension peaked as Vince lightly hit Sarah's chair. This action caused Atlas to rise with a single quick, determined movement. The dog didn't attack, but his posture changed. Now fully alert, his body tense like a bow ready to snap. The surrounding crowd began murmuring. Sarah, sensing the change in Atlas's behavior, frowned and stroked the dog's neck. "What's happening here?" she asked aloud, her expression concerned. Vince smiled, but it was a tense smile. He knew he was playing with fire, but couldn't back down in front of his friends in the crowd. Events escalated quickly. A woman in the cafe stood up and told Vince to stop. Atlas remained alert to all movements, ready for any potential danger. Detective Reynolds moved with practiced calm, positioning himself with clear sightlines to all 3 gang members. He'd radioed for backup, but subtly. This situation needed diffusing, not inflaming. If the Kings were targeting Sarah as a witness, making their confrontation public would only endanger her further. Eleanor, drawing on years of crisis intervention, kept her voice measured. "Sarah, I think we should get you to that appointment. You mentioned Atlas was due for his service animal recertification today?" It was a fabrication, but offered Sarah a dignified exit. Eleanor's gaze never left Vince as she spoke, her eyes communicating a clear message. "I see you. I know what you're doing." Milo had edged toward the motorcycles, hand slipping inside his jacket in a movement that sent alarm bells ringing through Jack's tactical assessment. The detective subtly repositioned, ensuring his body provided cover for Sarah if the situation deteriorated further. What none of them had noticed was the young barista who had begun live streaming the confrontation, her phone discreetly positioned on the counter. 3,000 viewers were now watching the tension unfold in real time. At that moment, Vince made a sudden move. He pretended to back off, but impulsively kicked one of the nearby chairs toward Atlas. The sound of metal hitting the ground echoed in the street. Atlas reacted instantly, stepping aside with impressive agility to avoid the chair. The dog growled more audibly, his protective posture becoming even more pronounced. With a final proud gesture, Vince stepped forward, reaching out to touch Sarah's shoulder. Atlas reacted in the blink of an eye, positioning himself between Vince and Sarah, quickly inserting himself between his owner and the motorcyclist. Atlas didn't attack, but stood firm with his teeth slightly bared, a clear warning that this needed to end here. The live stream viewer count jumped to 5,000 as Vince's aggressive move was captured in high definition. Comments flooded the feed. Someone call the police. Who does that to a service dog? That's assault. Detective Reynolds moved decisively now, all pretense of casual observation abandoned. That's enough, he announced, badge now fully displayed. Step back from the woman and her service animal. Eleanor had already positioned herself beside Sarah, one hand gently guiding her to stand. We're leaving now, she said firmly, her eyes never leaving Vince and his crew. Milo had reached the motorcycles, his nervous energy palpable even from a distance. Vince, we got company, he called, nodding toward the street where 2 patrol cars had turned the corner, responding to Jack's earlier call. The barista's live stream captured the moment perfectly. Atlas standing protectively before his visually impaired owner, a leather-clad man backing away with hands raised in mock surrender, and a plainclothes detective stepping between them. What should have been a simple intimidation tactic had backfired spectacularly for the Hollow Kings, and Vince knew it. After that day, Sarah and Atlas's life changed. Vince's threat came to their home at night, their peaceful apartment transformed into a fortress overnight, Atlas standing guard at the door while Sarah kept her phone nearby. Vince's nighttime visit and the subsequent mysterious sounds forced Sarah to call the police. Patrols came, found footprints, but Vince was already gone. The officers advised taking precautions, but Sarah wasn't planning to run. This was her home, and she wouldn't let Vince take it from her. After the police left, the apartment fell silent. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, with Atlas still alert at her feet. She stroked the dog's back, the familiar gesture giving her confidence. I don't know what's coming next, Atlas, she murmured, but I know you'll be ready. Detective Reynolds had been adamant. Sarah needed protection. The Hollow Kings don't make idle threats, he'd explained while officers swept her apartment for listening devices. And that live stream has gone viral, over 50,000 views now. Their reputation is on the line. Sarah had refused witness protection. I'm not disappearing because some thugs are embarrassed, she'd insisted. Instead, she'd accepted a panic button system linked directly to the precinct and reinforced locks on all windows and doors. Eleanor had arranged emergency leave from the hospital, temporarily moving into Sarah's guest room despite her protests. I'm not here as your doctor, she'd said firmly. I'm here as someone who won't let bullies win. That night, as Sarah lay awake listening to every sound, she reached out to touch Atlas's fur. The dog had refused to settle in his usual spot, instead positioning himself directly between the bedroom door and her bed. We've faced worse, haven't we, boy? She whispered, remembering the chaos of field hospitals, the scream of incoming mortars. Different dangers, same courage needed. 2 weeks later, Sarah's apartment door was knocked on. Atlas immediately straightened, but this time didn't growl. When they opened the door, a man and woman in police uniforms were standing there. Ms. Morgan, we have good news. Vince Roberts and his gang were arrested. They were on the wanted list for a series of motorcycle thefts and extortion crimes committed across state lines. You don't need to worry anymore. Sarah took a deep breath and stroked Atlas's head. Did you hear that, boy? We're safe. That night, Sarah and Atlas went for a walk on the trail overlooking the city. Feeling her dog's reassuring presence beside her, Sarah breathed in the cool evening air. You know, Atlas, I've never felt so safe, thanks to you. Atlas barked joyfully, now completely relaxed and able to run freely. Vince's shadow had been left behind, and Sarah and Atlas were moving toward a new beginning. Their bond stronger than before, showing itself with every step they took together. The viral video had done more than publicly shame the Hollow Kings. It had captured the public's imagination. A blind veteran and her loyal service dog standing up to intimidation had struck a chord. Veterans advocacy groups had reached out, offering Sarah speaking engagements about service animal partnerships. 3 television stations wanted interviews. Detective Reynolds had called that morning with the final piece of good news. The evidence collected from the warehouse shooting, combined with forensics from Sarah's apartment break-in, had provided enough to charge Vince and his associates with multiple felonies. They wouldn't see freedom for decades. As they reached the hilltop overlooking the glittering Los Angeles lights, Sarah stopped to catch her breath. "You know what, Atlas? I think we've found our new mission." She'd spent the morning on the phone with the veterans program that had paired them, volunteering to speak to newly disabled service members about the journey ahead. Their story of loyalty and courage would help others find their own path through the shadows. Atlas pressed against her leg, his steady presence a promise that whatever came next, they would face it together. This brings us to the end of this story. Thank you for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories. Have a nice day.